So my memories of Albert Garner were just a fun guy. He was like Uncle Albert to me.
And I think the thing that will stand out to me about Pastor Garner was he was always full of energy and lively. Even when nobody else was, he was always enthusiastic, always so passionate. And every single Sunday we would get invited up as the kids to come and do a song, and he'd play his ukulele. He loved fun and was passionate about encouraging us.
He loved Christmas. He always had his ukulele and he would sing when Santa got stuck up the chimney.
And J-O-Y.
And J-O-Y.
J-O-Y, J-O-Y, surely it must be.
Uncle Albert and Auntie Peggy were essentially family members for us. They and my parents go way back, so they've been part of my life for my whole life. But Pastor Garner, or Uncle Albert for me, was always just this larger than life. Like, I always remember him being really energetic. He would just always be on the go.
I saw in him someone who was not your stereotypical minister. And I didn't feel I was a stereotypical minister. And so when I looked at him, I thought, I think I could do that. And it put something in me that maybe God could use. If God could use Uncle Albert, maybe he could use me. And that was always knocking around in the back of my head. So very inspirational to me when I was a young man.
Yeah, I remember when Pastor Garner got sick. I remember it being a difficult time. It was tough watching him get ill and not be able to lead like he could, like he used to.
I remember admiring his faith at the time. I remember thinking that's how you deal with that kind of scenario.
Pastor Garner had been to various sort of doctors and hospital appointments, investigation, and he was going to have to go into hospital to have an operation. It took much longer to start to rebuild strength. I think after a period of time it became clear that perhaps Pastor Garner wasn't going to actually come back and be the full-time minister. I think the eldership of the church started then to think, okay, so who is going to take this church forwards? Who's going to bring the vision? Where we go next?
We had the task of finding a new pastor, which wasn't going to be an easy act to find. We felt we needed to find somebody who had some senior pastoral experience.
When I look back, there was a season where I started to take responsibility of a leadership training centre, which was connected to my local church in the Coventry area. And I was just getting my nose down working at this leadership development academy. The last thing I wanted to do was be a pastor.
Simon's name was mentioned quite early on, but because he had no senior pastoral experience, we didn't really seriously consider him. But I recall chatting with Andy Jordan. Simon's name was mentioned, and I just felt from God that God was saying to me, this is the man we need in the church.
In this leadership development centre I was in, my role was expanding in the local church. They asked me just to expand that leadership experience to a broader base. If you remember, I just said, I'm just going to go down to Cornwall area, and I was just going to go down there and just pray a little bit and just see what God was saying. Very excited about the prospects of what we could do. So I set off and was just driving down the M5, and as we were going past Gloucester, I just burst into tears. But I was weeping in the outside lane of the M5. I've just got to pull over and process what's going on here. And so pulled up at Cribbs Causeway, went into Starbucks, and I just sat there for the next 4 hours with a notepad. I've still got this notepad with a big question mark of, I think God is trying to say something to me, but I don't know what he's trying to say. The next few days, all I was thinking about was that moment where I knew God was speaking to me, but I didn't know what he was saying. I started to drive back, and I said, well, God, if this is you speaking to me, when I get to Junction 12. Like, speak to me again and I'll know it's you. Would you believe it? As I'm driving up towards the emotion starts to rise in me again. And I just swing off at Junction 12, drove all the way up and found myself parked at Robinswood Church, right? And climbed the hill. And I stood on the top of the hill and I said, God, if you're speaking to me, if this is you, I can only reflect to you what I believe you've already put in my heart. And it was a beautiful, clear day, and I could see it as far as the eye could see. And I just said, God, and I just threw my arm out like this. I said, I'll plant churches here and here and here and here. They'll all be for the glory of God. And then came back and drove straight home with the news for you.
And so we organised a vote.
On the day of the vote, we're all stood there. Mike Anders came out of the back with the count. You know, when he actually announced that he was coming, it was, yes, thank you, Jesus.
One of the things that was really important to us is we wanted to create a new culture in the church.
Yeah.
The big thing we were trying to teach people was to get church outside of the doors, outside the walls. The turning point, Gloucester got flooded in 2007. It had a flood.
Yeah.
And we were just watching literally helicopters flying over. And I remember waking up that Saturday morning thinking, we've got to do something. Yeah. So I sent a text out and just said, get to the church this morning, bring your shovel, bring your brush, bring your welly boots. And we cleaned out houses, but something changed in our hearts that day.
We were trying to give people permission to be vibrant and demonstrate their faith, to be outward looking and to love our community. And they were like, here we are. It was brilliant. It was a really good day.
Well, we realised we needed someone to help us grow the culture. So we started to think about who could we bring in. And we just said, look, we recommend John and Louise to come and take on the leadership.
We decided to come along. We had an interview weekend, which was quite scary.
It's the most intense interview for any job I've ever had. It was essentially a 24-hour grilling.
We knew that if we came here under Sign Alley, we were going to grow, we were going to be stretched, and that was going to be what God wanted for us.
God was putting a mandate on our heart to be not just the Robinswood area. Got to start thinking about rebranding the church.
And I remember I had this massive piece of paper in front of me and we were all in groups, and I took a pen and wrote one in massive letters, as big as I could, because that was the feeling that we had this sense of unity and oneness as a church.
It spoke more of our heart than our location.
Yeah. And
He was brilliant.
That's how we came up with One Church.
The success God was giving us was beginning to turn heads.
That kind of initiated a response to One Church that said, we want to go on this journey with you.
And that was the start of a journey that's still a very exciting journey, because now we've got Keynsham on board.
Absolutely.
I don't think those things would have happened without the collaboration of what God had placed in Mike and myself joining together to see what we could do in synergy better than what we could do in our individual parts. You want to talk about Zimbabwe. Well, you can't talk about Zimbabwe without mentioning Kennedy. And he is just a brilliant evangelist. And he just went around preaching, got a church going, got some people together. And we said, look, let's look at what we've got here. And out of that collaboration, 3 churches were birthed in Zimbabwe: Rusape, Zindoga and Karakaliki.
I think what's been brilliant about these years, these things that we've been talking about, is literally God was multiplying us. He was increasing the number of things that we were doing, the number of people we were reaching, the places we were going to do that work, and it seemed like we had this brilliant growing collection of ministries. But with that came this complexity. And in a way, rather than us just all being in one place doing one thing. We were spread out doing lots of things in lots of places. Every ministry we ever planted would have a name, and it might have its own logo or its own brand, and it was actually spreading us, wasn't it, rather than actually making us one.
Yeah.
And it was something that we needed to address, I think.
So we came together as a leadership team. We had a look at the structures that we've got now and the sort of various different ministries that sit within our one churches, and suddenly came to realise how complicated, how complex it had all become.
So I remember Simon coming to me and saying the logo that we've currently got, the main One Church logo, isn't suitable for us being something in many countries. It wasn't a logo that was going to work internationally.
I said, look, we're in this transition. How about coming up with a new logo? What do you think?
And I remember saying to him, okay, well, how many logos do you want me to change? Because we've got 30.
Different brands and names and logos and, dozens of Facebook pages and Instagram pages.
And for everyone, I think it suddenly dawned on us, this is more complex than we realised.
I had the opportunity to go on a trip to 12 Stone Church, which is a church in Atlanta in America. Simon has got a friend there called Charlie Wetzel. He's part of the board of this huge church. Thousands of people meet over a weekend. He invited us to go and experience how they run some things, and of course there was so much that we could learn from that. I came away from that with two things in mind. Number one was, we are such a busy church. We seem to be doing so many different things. Every night of the week something was happening, and all of those things were good, but we didn't seem to have that clarity of why are we doing all of this.
And we came to a point where we realised that we needed an overarching, smaller apostolic team, which was really just thinking and praying about the long-term strategic direction of One Church.
And I remember sitting down with them and saying, look, what if God gave us 50 churches? How do we simplify our message? How do we come up with a pathway that enables people to find Christ, encounter Christ, grow personally, and go and make a difference in the world, and just simply move from stage to stage to stage in their development and discipleship?
And what started with just a logo ended up being the biggest change that we've ever been through since Si arrived.
The fruit of this process will be a nearly century-old church that has 9 expressions, working together on the same mission, getting us to reach further than we've reached before, raise more leaders than we've ever raised before, and connect people with God in a brand new way, and it will grow more people, so it's worth it.
Yeah.
If you've ever had an email from me, I always sign off the email, live big. And I remember, I think it was Chris, was it Chris? Go, that's it.
And that's when we realised that this concept of living big was something that was so intrinsic to who Simon and Ali are.
That what Simon has always been saying and always been doing for years and years and years is live big.
Christ has come to help us live to our potential, to live to our fullness.
I really think that we're on the edge of something great now. We're nowhere near the finish line yet. We're only just getting started.
And I believe that the next phase for us as a church is us recognising who we are in Christ, actually living in that fullness every single day, stepping forward into that in faith and breaking new ground that you thought, I thought I just turned up for work. No, you don't just turn up for work. You are the priest in your parish, and as you serve, God will do miracles, and there'll be miracles in the school, there'll be miracles in the workplace, there'll be miracles in your front room. Don't you dare live small. No more living small. Right, we will live big every single day for the glory of God.